Hello everyone, and welcome to the Daily Gamer YouTube channel. Today we're going to be diving into a game chat video featuring the question, why should you play retro games? If you haven't yet, please remember to like and subscribe. We post game spotlights, product reviews, top 5s, and more, all centered around retro games. So if you're a fan, please remember to hit that like and subscribe button. So while this may not be a question often asked among people who already play these old titles, I wanted to explore some of the long list of reasons why anyone should start playing retro games today. And to do that, I'll be exploring some of the benefits they have over modern video games, and modern video game consoles in general as well. The first thing that comes to mind as a benefit to playing retro games is no microtransactions and no DLC. That's right, when you buy a retro game from a used store or even a new copy, you get the entire game. No DLC packs that come out months after release, no costumes or new skins hidden behind paywalls, and definitely no season passes. It's just the cartridge or the disc, and that's it. It couldn't really be any simpler than that, and easy to start. What this means is, developers back in the day actually had to complete a game before releasing it. Bonus items in those games were unlocked by actually playing it instead of adding payments to the game and giving them these microtransactions over time. I think this caused developers to create more complete and more interesting games, and were far more worth the price at the time of release. In addition to the absence of DLC and microtransactions, retro games also come with no updates. That means when you purchase one of these retro used titles, you can take it home and pop it into the console and begin playing immediately. No day one patches or updates to be found here. Now you may find the occasional game that had a second release or a re-release with some new content, such as Zelda Link's Awakening DX with the Game Boy Color, but you won't find entire updates to most games that delay the instant satisfaction of bringing a new game home and playing it immediately. On top of that, retro games do not require internet, which means you can always play them even if your internet goes out. It is always a bummer when you try to play an online game or an online shooting type of game and the internet's either slow or fails you completely, which entirely interrupts the experience of playing the game. Next up on the list of why you should play retro games is that the gameplay was the #1 focus of these developers due to the limitations of the hardware at the time. With modern games, they like to promote the visuals, frames per second, upgraded resolution, and visual details and the consoles that are the most powerful, instead of focusing on what should be the most important aspect: fun. The first game that comes to my mind is Madden when I think of this topic. It has been many years since Madden was fun, yet they always re-release the game each year, touting the new graphics, updated rosters, and realism of the game. But personally, I'll take a classic game of Tecmo Bowl any day over Madden, because the gameplay was the focus of the developers, and the game ultimately is more fun. With limitation comes innovation, and retro video games had timeless fun gameplay that I think many would argue still holds up great today. Adding on to the simplicity of the fun on retro games, another important aspect to consider is that the controls are simpler in these games as well. Most, if not all, of older controllers had less buttons on them than modern controllers. I mean, the old NES controllers only had a D-pad and 2 buttons. This means practically anyone can pick up these controllers and easily understand what their options are as far as control. I've seen people get really confused who tried to pick up the PlayStation 4 or Xbox One controllers due to their complexity, especially the always moving X button on all the modern controllers. But with retro game controllers, it is less of a barrier for more people to understand how to play. Not since the Nintendo Wii have we seen a control scheme that is so simple, literally anyone can understand and enjoy it immediately. And that was part of the success and timeless fun factor of Wii Sports. Anybody could play it. For you fans of popular game series like Mario Odyssey, Zelda Breath of the Wild, Metal Gear, Final Fantasy, and more, retro games are where these series all got their start. They're highly regarded amongst gamers and critics as absolute classics with infinite replay value. These titles have held their value over time because people love the stories and the experience of playing these old games. I highly recommend checking out the origins of these classics and see where your favorite video game series got started. It's always fun to see that. Lastly, one major point to make is that these video games that are retro, came out in the 80s or 90s, that have stood the test of time are just that, time-tested experiences. You know you're getting into a good fun time when you boot up a game that many people regard as a great classic video game. When you buy a new game, there's always the chance that it's a total flop. Look at games recently like Fallout 76 or Battlefront 2, which came out a few years back, but those games were ridden with bugs, microtransactions that really hindered the experience. Another important way to look at retro video games is like this. Today we live in a society where they want instant satisfaction from their games and from their media, and honestly, there's no better place to look than some of these retro games. A lot of them are 5 to 10 minute experiences that were ported from the arcade, and they give you that instant feeling of fun. Games like Galaga, Super Mario, Pac-Man, and more come to mind with this subject specifically, and you can get that instant satisfaction that you really crave out of a video game, as opposed to sitting through hours and hours of story on some of the modern titles. Definitely a good reason to play as well. So I've covered why you should play retro video games in this video, but now you might be asking yourself, where do I start? Well, I've got a few recommendations for you. The first one is to start with a plug-and-play mini console. And the three I'd recommend are the NES Mini, the Super Nintendo Mini, or the Genesis Mini. These are all great starting points to check out retro games in a form factor that is very similar to the original consoles and controllers. And that's one other big deal, is that a lot of times with emulation, you don't really get the same controller experience, and I think with the mini consoles, you really get to see what it was like to play it back in the day. In addition to the mini consoles, another great option is to play some of the retro game compilations on Nintendo Switch, many of which come free with the Nintendo Online service. Not only do you get to try out the games, but you can play online with a friend. Take the plunge and check out some of these fun classic games today, and you'll discover an era in gaming where the ultimate goal with video games was always to have fun. Thank you for watching the video. Are you a retro games fan? And what is your favorite retro console? Let me know in the comments below. I have new videos coming each week, so please remember to like and subscribe so you don't miss any of the upcoming videos. Thank you, and I'll see you in the next one.